put something in my ear.
I do. Yeah, let me try that. Let me try that.
All right, and we are set with the recording whenever you guys are ready with that part too.
Okay, so why don't we start with the Pledge of Allegiance? I don't have a flag here, but I'll stand towards Town Hall. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to start this meeting with announcements. Our first announcement is on the coronavirus. Sue and I just sent a notice out to town. We've lost 3 more residents to the coronavirus over the last 24 hours. The number of cases has gone up to 137. Admissions at the hospital are flattening and going down. So that's a good indicator that the social distancing and all the efforts we've taken as a community are working. Our Director of Public Health, Dr. Sullivan, believes that we're not over this yet. We still have a good ways to go, and that we still have to continue to wear masks, socially distance, do not gather in large crowds, do all the things we've been doing over the last 4 weeks to make sure we can defeat this virus. Sue, do you have any comments?
I just know that it's, obviously first, off to the families that, there are sympathies to them. But I think too, as the weather is getting nicer, people are thinking that maybe we're a little bit behind this, and this is not the time to stop. We have to still be diligent in our social distancing and our masks and staying within our family units. So.
Yeah, we really do. I've gotten a few calls over the last few days to reopen the Still River Greenway. And I don't believe, I wanted to talk to you and Harry about it, Sue. I don't believe this is the time. We kept the Greenway open for a few days after most of the surrounding towns had closed all their parks. And the Saturday before we closed it, there were like 1,200 people on the Greenway. And what I'm afraid of is people will leave their towns and come to ours. So along those lines, and I wanted to talk to you and Harry about this, I had a meeting with all the Candlewood Lake surrounding towns in Fairfield, Sherman, Danbury, and New Milford. And we've all agreed that we should hold off opening our parks on the lake. Mark Boughton is particularly concerned with this, and so is Pat Delmonico up in New Fairfield with Squance Pond, that if we open our parks too soon, we are going to get a massive rush of people from New York. They come up here in the normal times, especially to Squance Pond, and we don't think we can manage it. Brookfield's in a better place than most towns in that we have a gated community at our town park. But we've all agreed that we will put forward holding off opening up our park, Cadogan in our case, Danbury Beach in Danbury's case, until after Memorial Day to get through that and then make a decision. Now we can change that, but I think that's a good decision. I think it will help all the surrounding towns. The report I got from Candlewood Lake Authority today is there are a lot of boats out on the lake right now. So it could only get worse. So I think that's a good idea. Sue, what do you think?
Yes, no, I agree. I was so far by the lake this past weekend, and a lot of boats there. I want to encourage people to realize, though, even though the Greenway is closed, we do have a lot of open space in town, and I would encourage them to go on to the Park and Rec website. There's maps there, and then it'll also list the different areas that they can still hike to. Not all of them are real hiking. I mean, you can still walk relatively flat as you would with the Greenway. So for some people, it would still be okay. So I would just encourage them that we just don't, the Greenway is so narrow that we just can't have everyone in that same area.
No,
So.
we can't. It's not safe. It's just not safe. So Harry, we got you. Do you have it? Oh, here, he's connected to audio.
Looks like he's coming on now.
There you go.
He is.
Hey, Harry. Have you been listening? Were you able to hear what we were just talking about? You're muted. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm fine now. I've got the volume working and I could not hear anything, but I can hear everything now. I'm fine.
Okay, so the discussion, Harry, was about when to open Cadigan, the beach.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I had a meeting with all the surrounding towns yesterday. And the consensus was that everyone will hold off till after Memorial Day. I know that won't make a lot of people happy, but what we're really afraid of is huge rushes of people coming up from New York. They already go to Squanch, you know that in a regular year. And we do not want to open before every other town starts to open their facilities so that we have a gradual, eased opening that works for everyone.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you're only talking 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
You know, before Memorial Day. So no, I would agree with that. Yes.
Okay, good. So we'll do that. And then for summer camp and things like that, we're going to still play that by ear right now. We haven't made a decision. We're going to wait to see what the governor and the state comes down with on guidance. I'd love to have our summer programs for the kids, but it's got to be safe.
Well, I thought that was pretty much under the jurisdiction of the municipalities. That's because I've heard that some are open and some aren't open.
It is. It's our decision to make. What I'm saying is I think we should still keep an open mind on that. Maybe we have a shortened summer camp. I don't know. Mary and the Parks and Rec Commission are looking at that now. I'm going to come up with some suggestions for us. So I suggest we just wait on that and make a decision as soon as we can, as soon as we're comfortable.
No, I agree with that.
Okay, so our coffee with the community was scheduled for Saturday, May 30th. We didn't have that. In the future, we'll probably still do a special selectment meeting. I'm sure you're both amenable to that. Probably do it the Monday after. Does that make sense? Or the Monday before?
The Monday before is Memorial Day, but we could do it on the 18th,
Okay, so we can do
which
it on
would
the 18th.
be 2 weeks from today. So that'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You good with
I
that,
think
Harry?
Harry would
Yeah,
prefer
that was
sooner.
fine.
Okay, good.
All right.
We don't, is Nelson's not on. Okay, so we got some correspondence. We got the WPCA was awarded a clean water grant, which is great. They also sent to us their septic survey for the Candlewood Lake watershed properties. And that's all the way from like Echo Bay Marina, all the way up into the shores. It's in your packet. If residents want to look at that, I encourage them to do that. We do need to, at some point, manage this better. We have much too many nutrients going into the lake. So we'll look at that. It's going to be a long haul on that. And I'm sure Nelson will come. He's already presented to us once. He'll come to us again and give us another presentation. I know he's planning on holding some public hearings so that people can come, have discussions with the WPCA, understand exactly what it is they want to do. Any questions on that?
Steve, if I can add to that, obviously we're all concerned about the health of the lake because that means so much to the town. But the study also showed that the drinking water is compromised in some areas as well. So as much as, you know, this could be an expensive project for some people, not only is it going to help the lake, but it's also going to give them clean drinking water.
Yes, it's clear that in some cases effluviant, what would you call effluvia, from septic systems is somehow sneaking into people's wells in some cases. That's not a good thing. So this would help everybody, but it's early days, and I think we need to have a very strong, open marketing campaign to make sure everybody understands what's involved, what the costs would be, what the advantages are. I think we're going to see, I know 30 years ago, they brought this up when we lived over in that side of town and people were dead set against it. I think that thinking has changed substantially and that people are much more open to this because they know if we lose the lake, if the lake becomes dead, it's going to kill property values in that side of town. It is. And so a little bit of prevention, an ounce of prevention kind of thing. And you never know, the state may come down to us and say, hey, lake is a state resource. It's a gem. You have to protect it. So we'll see. We'll see.
And I know Nelson mentioned he's looking for grants as well, state and federal. So, you know, hopefully we'll have great success in that.
Yeah, and given how many people live around the lake and the economic importance of the lake, I think we have a very good argument for grants too. Harry, do you have anything on that you'd like to add?
No, I agree with, I agree with the direction you're going in.
Okay, good. Okay, so next is our monthly financial update, the exciting part of the meeting.
Oh,
Marcia?
you've got that right. So we are, it's the 4th of the month. So I finished the budget to actual for the expenditures about an hour ago. And we're well below budget. That we had a few things that are adding to that is some savings from COVID, some very mild winter and low fuel. And we're potentially, depending on the Board of Ed or the Board of Finance's decision on how they're balancing for next year, may or may not fund the OPEB. If that was the case, I've got to get you an update to our policy. But so our expenditures are under budget, but unfortunately so are our revenues. That last week we tried to do a quick projection, and I'll start it tomorrow on the regular one that I give you to look at the revenues. But tax collections are way down. That they're down by I think it was $580,000, and in talking to the tax collector, that part of that is some of those people that would pay if she threatened them with a tax sale. One of the executive orders doesn't allow her to threaten a tax sale, and so some of that money hasn't come in. We'll take another look this week to see now that April is done where we stand, but it seems to be the worst year that we've had. Our projection right now is that it's going to be the worst year that we've had in the last 6, which are is the data that I had. So that's down. We thought we were going to be over budget in interest earnings. We are over budget, but not as much as we thought, because of course our interest rate has dropped, and expenditures are down. There's 2 things that I'm going to ask of you tonight. That one is to approve the Intra department budgets. As we get to the end of the year, the budget is part of our internal controls, that they're not allowed to do purchase orders that would put them over the budget. So we want to do the Intra department transfers, and then we want to look at an inter-department transfer between departments, and that would be let me pull it up here. Let me, I guess I only have one screen to share. Where is it? That would be for some of our COVID costs. That these are the purchase orders that we've written now, and they may not all be totally used, but our biggest purchase order so far has been for EMS services. That that there's an extra shift that's been put on. There's extra PPE. They're keeping the EMS sequestered so that we haven't had an issue with illnesses. We've had some costs for working at home, and then we've had costs for cleaning and PPE. So this top section here are the purchase orders that we have outstanding right now. And then we have some other ones that we're working on, that there's additional costs from the EMS when they gave us this estimate here, that it was for part of the cost that they're incurring. And as you know, we're just changing every day as we go along and what people have to do. But the big change here is they've got personnel, but they're also short on revenues because other people are not going to the hospital, and they are treating them, but not transporting them. So there's a drop in their revenue.
So
In addition,
can I just jump in there?
Yeah.
So we only get paid for the ambulance if we actually transport somebody. So there have been cases where we've gone in on a heart attack, expended $1,500 to $1,800 on materials, drugs, supplies, and the patient has been ordered to stay at their home. So we're seeing a lot of people who do not want to go to the hospital, which I understand. And so it's down about 40%, and we think that's going to continue into next year.
and then the other costs that are still in progress that we're actively working on, what are the costs going to be to reopen town hall and library and other places.
So can I jump in here and just give a little history? So Dr. Sullivan, our Director of Public Health, is putting together protocols for opening town hall, how to do it safely, how many people we can allow in the building, where we can allow them, when we can allow them. Do we do it by appointment? Of course, they have to wear masks. We're going to have a supply of masks in case people show up without masks. But then we also have to protect our employees. And we have some employees whose desks are just too close together. We're going to have to put up paneling, and we're going to have to put up the sneeze shields across every counter in town hall so that our employees are safe and residents are safe. So we're working through that now, but that's what we estimate the cost will be.
Can I ask you a question? Of these costs, what of them can we put towards FEMA? What can we hope to maybe get 70% back?
75%. We're hoping to get 75%. We're going to put everything in. I think we can make a good argument with FEMA that these are protective measures to keep people from getting the COVID-19 virus. And so we're going to put it in. When we will get the money, my guess is 2 to 3 years from now, but I think we have a good chance of being reimbursed.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, can I ask one question? Do we have any idea what the cleaning costs are going to be for the municipal? I was just looking at the police station, which is, we have a cleaning about $8,200.
Right.
I mean, do we have any idea how much it's going to cost? Are we going to be cleaning every day? I mean, it's going to be like hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep the buildings clean.
Well, this is a little bit deceiving in that we did have somebody with coronavirus in town hall. So we did a deep clean of the entire town hall. We do have somebody today, and has been for about 2.5 weeks, coming in every day and just wiping down surfaces, cleaning the bathrooms, anything anybody could possibly touch. The police is a little bit different, and this expense may continue to be there, Harry, because if they transport somebody or have somebody in one of their vehicles who even possibly had the coronavirus, they have to deep clean that vehicle. And that's where a lot of that expense is coming from.
Can we ask the people in town to just behave so we don't have to pick them up?
Yeah, we're asking people to behave.
Wow. Okay. I mean, my thought is if the school's open and if the library is going to open, I mean, what the cleaning bill is going to be. I mean,
it could get significant if we want to be serious about keeping these buildings spotless. The schools, Harry, I don't know how we do that. I don't know how we do that.
But we would have to
figure it out. Yeah, we have to. We're gonna.
I'm not saying don't clean them. I'm just.
Yeah. We just have to figure it out.
Have to figure it out, and it has to be done.
Yeah.
Well, part of that is why we don't know the answers yet. We don't know a lot of things. So the estimates to date are 183,000. That we don't know about the schools on if we're going to have to address that this year or next year. So that's a big unknown. And what we're asking for is 195,000. There's already 5,000 there. This would bring it up to 200,000 for the budget. And then this is where we would get the costs from: salt and sand, the Medicare life insurance, and then a bunch of little things that everyone, when we came into this, every department head has been so cooperative and helpful, and we cut off everybody's conferences. We've, as of over a month ago, we've cut off everybody 50% of their office supplies since we're not in, and all those little amounts add up to this 28,000. So, and then up here we've got a lot of repetitive things for office, for supplies, PPE, just because we don't know who is going to be available. So each one of these purchase orders is a different vendor. Whoever gets them available, wherever we can buy them from, that's what we'll do. So we're asking for this transfer that would then have to go to the Board of Finance. And then the other sheet, the summary sheet, just details within the departments, small transfers back and forth.
Right. So you're looking for a motion at this point in time, right, Marcia?
I'm looking for a motion. Yes.
I'd make a motion that we expend this money as outlined by Marcia to fight the COVID-19 virus. Do I have a second?
Not to expend it, but you want to transfer.
Transfer. Sorry, I amend my motion to transfer.
I'll second.
Yeah, okay.
The sources of funding, I don't see a total there. Does that equal
It does.
something?
It equals 195,000 at the top
Okay.
and at the bottom. Sorry.
Okay.
I have a question as well. This is money that we're going to need this year. The budget that we're looking at, the Board of Finance is going to be putting together. Do we have anything in that for next year for, preventative maintenance?
Yes, we do. We do, Harry. We have additional EMS costs. We have a plan in place in that budget. The budget that we gave them Friday afternoon includes the additional EMS expense and also includes the downward trend in revenues. So it's a very conservative, worst case budget that we put together, that the Board of Finance asked us to put together. So we think we've covered everything, but it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Harry,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
to your point that what we're looking for next year is to put in a very large contingency like we've not had before, and really have the budget be more of an iterative process where we take a look and we say, okay, that every 2 months maybe we look and say, okay, we've got to continue the EMS for a little bit longer. Let's transfer it from contingency to EMS.
We're doing that because we know we're going to have additional expenses next year. We just don't know where we're going to have them exactly.
Right.
So putting it in contingency allows us to go through the process. The Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance all go through, agree, okay, here we have this expense after 2 months. Let's address it. And as Marcia says, it's going to be iterative the whole year, I think.
Right. And I know that we had put forward the increase in the EMS. I just wanted to make sure that the Board of Finance, when they're putting this together, is considering,
They are.
the.
They are. It's in the budget that they requested from us.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So any further discussion on that? All
No.
those in favor?
Aye.
And then
You're
you
yes,
just,
Barry?
Yeah, yes, I.
Okay, so the transfers are approved.
Sue
is that
a
both
little louder
transfers?
than I was.
I'm sorry, did someone ask me a question?
No, I said Sue was a little louder than I was, so you
Oh.
couldn't.
and you
And
approve
motion
both
includes
transfers.
sending it. Okay. We need to send that to the Board of Finance, right? Because it's coming out of different departments.
Yep, and then you want to do a transfer for the Intra department, the just moving things from one line to another within the departments.
Do we have that?
Yep, it was on the summary. I can pull that up if you want me to.
Could you quickly, please?
Yep.
I know it's a lot of detail, but
It's a lot of detail. Yep. And it is right here. This is the one that, let's see if I can make it bigger.
Yeah, we looked at this before. I thought we did this before, Marcia, no? Or is this an
Um,
additional iterative?
We did it back in January. We looked at it last month, but we didn't make the transfers. So it would be these things here that just within each department, there's a little bit back and forth. That was the document that we shared tonight, but all within departments.
Okay. I've looked at this before. I'm comfortable with it. Sue, Harry, are you comfortable? These are not huge amounts. It's really just housekeeping in a sense that we're trying to keep everything clean. And we have the authority to make these transfers ourselves just as a board of selectmen.
Yes, I would defer to you on this. I mean,
So I would make,
there aren't any really large numbers, and
no, there aren't. So I would make the motion that we approve the transfers Intra department as outlined in the report that Marcia's showing. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved 3-0. Okay,
Thank you.
anything else, Marcia?
Nope, unless you have questions.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Marcia. I really appreciate it. And now we go to our presentations. Greg Nabowski has been patiently listening to us, and I'm sure with bated breath, and he's going to give us a presentation. I asked Greg to just give us a quick overview of the entire streetscape because it's been quite a while since we discussed 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5. So Greg, would you like to take over?
Oh,
Do I do that first or town business openings?
Town
Just
business-
following the agenda, that's all.
Oh, town business opening. Oh, yeah. Greg, could you do the town business openings?
Yes, I can. So in your package is a one-page summary, and there it is. So I'll go through this. I won't read every word. I'll go through it briefly. The first comment I'd like to make is you can see this document is dated May 1st. Since then, there have been a couple significant updates that are relative to this subject matter, and I will touch upon them as I go through this this one-page summary. So we've taken several actions over the past few weeks because of this virus. Steve and I have met with senior managers at both Union Savings Bank and Newtown Savings Bank. We really met with them to learn about how they are responding to the businesses in Brookfield. And we were pleased to hear that both of them have been very proactive and businesses have been coming to them, especially for the PPP program.
And Greg, if I could just add, they told us they had over 800 approved PPP applications. Yeah,
Yes.
that's for all businesses in their area, but that's still pretty good, I think.
And that was before the second amount of funding came through Congress. This was 2 weeks ago.
Right.
In addition to that, there are many, many programs that continue to be rolled out by the feds and by the governor's office for mortgage assistance, tax relief, tax extension filings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a small business guide that has been published by the DECD. It's 3 weeks old, and it's by now, I'm sure it's outdated, but there is a lot of information out there for businesses that want to seek it or that we pass that on to. In addition to that, there's been at least 33 updates on the town website, and we get a lot of phone calls at town hall and land use asking questions like, what's available? How can you help me? And the first thing we'll do is we'll point them to the town website or send them links to specific items that come up. In addition, we've been working with FEMA, or FEMA's been working with us. We've had a couple webinars, and relative to how it impacts Brookfield businesses, we are coordinating and talking to private nonprofit organizations about their claims and how they may link with us and file joint claims, or they may file separately. More to come on that. FEMA has dramatically changed and I believe simplified the filing process since this is the first time in the history of our country, there's a FEMA claim that impacts every town in every state. And they simply do not have the resources to give us a program manager like they did for the macro burst. So we're going to be on our own on this one. And FEMA's already said, you're on your own, you fill out the paperwork, and we'll audit it. So much more to come on that over the next few months.
So in a way, that might make it easier, Greg, because I know they went through us on the macro burst with a fine tooth comb.
Yeah.
Up and down, right?
Yeah. But I'm going to treat it like we have to be held to the same standard of being audited. So my plan is to do a lot of documentation and not cut any corners.
Oh, I agree. And we've been doing that since we declared the emergency. From that day, Greg's been tracking everything along with Marcia and Kevin.
Yeah. So next is a big one, and this is one I want to give you an update on. I should say in mid-April, small businesses started calling and saying, how can you help us open? How do we open in this new normal? And I went to the zoning commission's meeting on April 23rd, also talked to Fran Lally, our zoning enforcement officer, and we started the conversation on what can we do to help businesses open? And let me just give you the update on where we are today. This morning, 3 restaurants called and said, how can you help me get to some outdoor dining? 3 restaurants this morning, all before 9:30 in the morning. And I think some of that came about because of what has been in the papers last week and a new executive order or a communication from the governor's office. So
So can I jump in here just real quick, Greg? It turns out that I had a conversation with Jason D'Souza this weekend, and I talked to Greg today. There are 2 types of liquor licenses, indoor and outdoor. And you have to have both if you want to serve on like a patio environment that the governor's talking about, outdoor dining. So we're working with the state. I sent a note to Ned Lamont saying, hey, why don't you just issue an executive order that says, if you have an indoor liquor permit, you can use it outside. The problem we have here is that if somebody, let's say Pulcinella, just use them as an example, or Portobello, if they want to go outside, they have to create a plan. It's got to go through the fire marshal, through the police department, through our director of public health. And we've got to make sure it's a safe plan, that we can still have emergency access. There are a lot of moving parts on this stuff, and Greg is doing a great job managing that and getting it up to speed so we can open these businesses as quickly as possible. Sorry, Greg, go ahead.
So I'm looking on May 1st, there was for immediate release from the Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection, a letter issued. I have it here in front of me, and it is a guidance statement on outdoor service of alcoholic beverages. This is one of the issues that Fran has talked to the Eric Cook, the zoning commission chairman, on this morning. He's also met with the health department. He's talked to Jason. We talked to Jay Purcell, and they have agreed upon I'll call it a modified process or an application by which when a restaurant calls and wants to have or provide outdoor seating, how they go about it, what approvals have to be granted. It's more than just liquor licenses. It's got to do with means of egress, a safe parking lot. Are you increasing the capacity of your restaurant or just moving tables? There are a lot of pieces to this puzzle that Fran and the zoning commission and various departments have worked together on. And I've asked Fran to put together something that summarizes this all in one piece of paper, so all of us in town hall have the same guidelines by which to give direction. It is not as trivial as just a liquor license. There's a lot of other issues at play here. So that was worked on today. And I don't believe it can wait until their next zoning meeting for approval, which is May 14th. I know they're working on it now, and they may have a special zoning meeting before their regular meeting. So stay tuned for more on this, but this was the focus of this morning when the phone started ringing at 8:30.
Yeah, I put a call into Eric to discuss this and asked him to actually, hey, once we have that document from Fran and you're comfortable with it, that we give it to them and then they get together and on an emergency basis, and we have to, maybe the Board of Selectmen does it, allow this to happen because we need to move forward.
Yeah,
Greg, can I ask one quick question?
yes.
If restaurants want to have outdoor seating, this is going to fall under the jurisdiction of the local regulations, or is it, state? I mean, can we as a town approve, the outdoor eating other than the liquor license, or does that have to go through the state?
The short answer is yes, Harry. We can't trump any of the state unless the governor has an executive order that waives some state requirements. There are things within zoning commission's control. Let me give you an example about what Eric is thinking about this morning. If we really get hit hard on this, they're going to give these approvals on a case-by-case basis. And Eric is suggesting that Fran and maybe one zoning commissioner goes out after these outdoor establishments are set up and just give it a little inspection.
Mm-hmm.
But issues about social distancing, what Eric was saying this morning, and I think Jason agrees, it's going to be up to every business to maintain social distance standards. We're not going to become, I don't think anyways, we're going to be policing every place to make sure every table is 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
They're going to have to take some personal responsibility in that regard.
Okay.
And their customers are too.
Yes, right. So the last thing I'll mention on things we've done is we continue to evaluate programs. I am on multiple DECD and DEMIS webinars and conference calls. And I mentioned to Steve, when Steve asked the question, what else can we do to help businesses? The one thing I learned from at least one other town, and it may not be coming from their general fund, is they're helping small businesses that have not been eligible for PPP by providing loans. Now, it may be from some kind of agency or some kind of economic zone or whatever in this town, but that's an example of what other towns are doing. In that regard, I'd like to mention a second thing that broke today. You might have all seen this, and that is a fact that, let me find my correct piece of paper here. I just saw today for the first time that the Connecticut Department of Labor has announced they're going to be offering unemployment insurance for companies that have a single employee, self-employed individuals. Now that is new, and that just came out this morning. So for those companies that don't meet all the PPP requirements to get that, participate in that program, this is something to help those companies that are, you have a self-employed guy to be eligible for unemployment insurance. That just came out this morning or this weekend. So this thing is really, every day it seems like something new's coming out, and we're doing our best to keep up with it.
Greg, this unemployment insurance, is this on the web, or how do people get information on this?
Yes, it's on the Connecticut Department of Labor website. The program opened up on April 30th, and you can fill out your application. I have the link, the exact link, but it's the Department of Labor website.
Okay, good.
We'll make sure that gets out on the town website too.
Yeah.
And along those lines, last week we found out that local businesses could apply for PPE, and we put that out last Monday. And within 2 days, 92 local businesses applied, and I'm happy to say that we obtained 2,800 masks for them. And the police department went up, picked up the masks, and agreed to do all the distribution of that, so everyone stays safe. So they're going around and they're almost finished with distributing that to the businesses. And that's really a cooperative effort on the part of them. I have to applaud the police for helping us with that.
Greg, do you know is as far as the business, essential businesses, is there any relief for getting the disinfectant wipes so that they can wipe down, equipment and, this is for companies who are essential companies who are out working. Personally, I have not been able to find any.
Not,
I didn't
not
know.
to, not to my knowledge, Harry, just PPE. I don't think it includes wipes.
Yeah. All right. Only because, when they're out, if they're working outside or if they're with, working with tools or, somebody comes by or whatever, it would be nice to be able to wipe them down, but.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So if you can scroll down, please, whoever's managing this, thank you. So I talked about the May 14th zoning meeting. Again, what they were looking at doing as of last Friday. So the way they're going to tackle this idea of allowing or permitting outdoor dining is going to be by modifying using the temporary events permit process. Temporary events are currently a permit application. It's available on the town website. And that's going to be the process by which they're going to manage and allow outdoor dining. They're also going to allow some extra temporary signage in this instance. And they are going to waive, and I think this has already been approved, and I'm not sure, they're going to waive any town fees. They cannot waive state fees. The only time state fees are going to be involved is if the outdoor dining establishment wants to put a structure over the outdoor dining. Let's say something more than a tent or maybe even a tent.
Yeah.
When it comes to creating or building a structure, there are state fees that at this point can't be waived. But if it's a town fee, I believe they're going to waive them.
Yes, I agree. Sue, Harry, we need to get these businesses.
Yes,
Okay.
I would do that for the businesses, absolutely.
And as I mentioned, there's a lot to this outdoor seating issue beyond just a liquor license, as I mentioned here. So it's really good to see that really over the past few days, everyone pulling together to try to make this work in really unprecedented fashion.
Yeah, so we can get it done quickly. Greg, you've done
Yes.
great work on this. I really appreciate it.
So then we continue to work with the land use office. In fact, ZBA's got a meeting tonight that I'll talk about in my next presentation, and anyone else to take any other suggestions and move this whole issue forward. I talked to Sue Murphy at the chamber this morning. Let me turn off my phone, sorry. And once we finalize, or once zoning finalizes their plan on outdoor dining and other things, we'll get that communicated broadly across all the areas I mentioned here. And we continue to work with the Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, the EOC and the DECD on webinars and video conferences. Virtually every day or every other day, there's at least one video conference to attend on this issue. And then I'll close with these key learnings. And this is what the bankers said to us. In every case, if a business owner has a relationship with us, we should be their first phone call because we can help direct them to the resources available. So we encourage any business owners to first call their banker. We also, another key learning I believe is that there are many moving parts here, many available resources, and there's a lot of other variables. And many towns, in fact, every town is doing doing it a little bit differently. One size does not fit all. So we have to customize our approach to what works for Brookfield. And lastly, this is an ongoing process. We'll keep trying to look out for best practices on what other towns are doing, and we're working to create the best plan for reopening Brookfield. So that is it.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
Harry, Sue, any further questions?
No, thank you.
I mentioned this in one of our other meetings, but the residents have no idea how important and how much work Greg does for this town. And I just want to publicly just say it again, that the work and the detail that he puts into everything is just incredible. And we need to be very thankful to have him.
And he's very modest. Yes. Thank you, Greg.
I know he would never, want anyone to say that, but I want to make sure people appreciate what he's doing.
Yes, we do appreciate it. So, Greg, you want to move on to, I'm sorry, streetscape, and I'll let you just take it over. You know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And if I
Oh,
could just interrupt, finance really appreciates it too.
thank you all very much. There's a lot of great people in town doing a lot of really good work. So, okay, streetscape. So I have a few slides here. I'd like to just give you an update on all of the development plans. And I've talked to every one of the developers on all of these projects since I put this together on Thursday or Friday. Then I want to give you an update by showing you an overview map, a comparison of the cost and features of what's now 5 phases, and then talk about why I'm here today, the LOTSIP program, and talk about the new phase 4 and phase 5. So before we go to the next slide, let me just talk about all of the development projects in the TCD as they impact the streetscape project. And the reason why this discussion is important is in every case, we've made the assumption, because the developers have said to us, we will be putting in those projects before the town puts in their next phases of streetscape. And what that means is they are not in our scope of work or in town costs. The developer is going to put in streetscape as required by the zoning regulations for the frontage in front of those projects. As we go forward, if that changes, let's say a streetscape project gets pushed forward or developer pushes their plans back, we're going to have to make a decision on adding their work to our scope of work or just not having streetscape in front of that particular development. So it's important to understand each one of these projects. So let me go through them briefly. Brookfield Village Phase 2. Construction is planned for June 1st. Now, as you know, when we did phase 1 over two and a half years ago, that was a perfect example of working collaboratively with the developer. We both did our streetscape projects at the same time, their development and our project. Phase 1's done, so I just want to mention phase 2 is scheduled for construction on June 1st. They're down to 2 developers. The bidding is out, and they're down to two builders, contractors, and we'll be making that decision soon. Phase 3 is on Station Road, still part of Brookfield Village. And their plan is to submit to their wetlands application in 2 months. And that's going to come into play on what I call a future phase, possibly phase 6. And I'll talk about that later in the presentation. For Green Acres, that's one case where I've not talked to that developer, but I have talked to Tony Lacera at 731 Federal Road for the grocery store. And they're actually at the ZBA as we speak in their Zoom meeting, seeking approvals for a little bit of setback variance for that grocery store that's going to come in behind the Still River Greenway Trail. This project impacts Streetscape Phase 5 that I'll be talking about. And then for 730 Federal and 37 Old Route 7, this is Paul Scalzo's 2 projects, the medical building there at the corner and the townhomes along Old Route 7. Both of those projects impact the scope of work of Streetscape Phase 5. And then finally, there is a developer who owns 3 parcels, 101 to 105 Laurel Hill. And we've been talking with them and reviewed their preliminary plans for apartments along those 3 parcels of land. They would be required to put in streetscape, but that's a case where it would be not attached to anything we currently have done and may want to consider a phase 6 that would tie in the Brookfield Village Station Road to these apartments. But that is really further down the road. So with that, if we can go to the overview map. So obviously phase 1 is done. Phase 2, the construction was complete this past summer. I'm going to talk a little bit more about phase 2 on the next slide. Phase 3 is planned for the summer of 2021. That is LOTSIP money, and the bid package will be out sometime this winter. And then phase 4 Here's a case where was a TAP grant approved 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, and it connects phase 1 all the way up to Newberry Village. The reason you see a gap between those parts of phase 4 is that is where the Enclave and Green Acres is planned to put in those 2 major developments and must put in streetscape standards when they do that development. At the center of that gap is going to be, I'll call it a new intersection, turning lanes into each one of those developments on each side of the road. What I've learned about those 2 projects is they're slower than, they're not going at the same pace that we thought even 6 months ago. For a variety of reasons, those 2 projects have slowed down, and certainly the coronavirus hasn't helped it any. So those, as best I can tell, really aren't moving all that quickly. Phase 5, this is what I call our new phase. This came about for really 2 or 3 reasons. What really took us over the top here is the grocery store project on the east side of the Still River Greenway, and the need to connect our streetscape design to a new crosswalk to that new development. And that is what we're now calling Streetscape Phase 5. I'm going to talk about all these on the next slide, but that's kind of the overview. If you look at where I show future, that would be, let's call it Phase 6. That would connect Phase 1, where it ends at the existing ice cream shop. It would go to Station Road in front of the new Brookfield Village Phase 3, and then turn north to 101 Laurel Hill Road, which those 3 properties there are that apartment development that I talked about. That may be a future Phase 6.
And Greg, we've also discussed, though it's very, very preliminary, actually connecting 5 to where you have future. At some point that may happen.
Yes. And I'll tell you, I don't know if Jay Annis is on the phone, but I did invite Jay to listen to this because he is on a task force that is trying to get the Still River Greenway connected into New Milford. And how we do that will be somewhere on this map. And as each developer comes forward with their plans, we ask them, would you please consider a right-of-way for us to do an extension of the Still River Greenway through some of your property to get us going north? Right. So that's part of the longer-term plan as well. So next page. Okay, if you like numbers, this slide's for you. And I don't want to go through all this, but you can just see the construction years for the 3 phases that I talked about, and the new Phase 4 and what I call Phase 5. The reason I call this Phase 4 new is we've already approved Phase 4 at a town meeting for $2.4 million. And if you go to my previous slides, when I made this presentation to you about a year ago, it was with a TAP grant, TAP funding. What's happened now is the LOTSIP program has been opened up to us in our COG. The reason it got opened up is in late 2019, when we were given a presentation by the DOT at a TAG meeting, and the TAG is the operating group that creates recommendations for the COG. We learned that we were an underperforming COG when it came to spending LOTSIP money. And the reason we were underfunding the program because our policies weren't appropriate for the speed at which projects were getting done.
Can I jump in there, Greg, a little bit?
Yep.
So WestCog, who controls this and runs the TAG, always had a policy of if we had $5 million in LOTSIP funding, that's exactly how much we would approve. Well, it turns out over the last 10 years, towns will apply for LOTSIP for a project and do nothing with it. Don't approve town funding, don't do any planning. So we've changed that because the state has come to us and said, hey, we're not going to give you any more money unless you spend the money you have, to allow towns like Brookfield, when we have a project like this, we develop it, we go to TAG, we get approvals, we get the town approvals for spending, and then we actually do the project. There are literally projects sitting in that queue that are 12 years old that haven't even gone to the design phase from other towns. But that money's locked up, and the state does not like that. So we've readjusted from a WestCog standpoint that we are going to overcommit what we're given because we know that towns are not going to do some of these projects. So it's good for Brookfield because we are doing it.
So what that means now is they opened up a solicitation, and now that money's going to be spent on basically a first come, first served basis. So if you have a project and you get it, it meets all of the LOTSIP requirements, and you get approved by the COG, those that spend the money first can spend it. And then once we hit the ceiling, we hit the ceiling, but we're so far from that, it's years away. So this LOTSIP application got opened up, I believe, in January. The deadline was April, but they moved it back to May. It's May 14th, actually. So these two, our application deadline is now next Thursday. And that's why I'm in front of you today to seek LOTSIP approval for phase 4 and phase 5. If we get approved on phase 4, it'll supersede the TAP grant approval from over a year ago. Phase 5 is a new phase that we've never applied for before. So you can look down here and see how many linear feet of roadway and sidewalk and the 99 sidewalk lights we're adding and number of driveways we've renovated and on and on and on. And then you can look at the funding sources, the total cost, the town's contribution. And then I put together a couple metrics maybe worth mentioning at the very bottom. If you do some simple math, you can calculate the cost of streetscape per linear foot of roadway or per linear foot of sidewalk added. And the numbers are all over the place. And there's reasons for that. In some cases, there's sidewalk on both sides of the road. On some cases, it's only one side. And then you look at the highest cost phase. It was phase 2. Why was phase 2 the highest cost? There's two reasons, in my opinion. The first is it cost us about 25% more because it was federal funding. It's the only project on this slide that would be federally funded with the TAP grant. And the requirements to spend federal money, in my opinion, add about 20 to 25% to the cost of the project.
Easily.
So that and the fact that so far, phase 2 was the only phase where we hit ledge. So from Dunkin' Donuts at Portobello's all the way down to the LB's Barbershop, we spent days jackhammering out ledge just to put in sidewalk and lights. In fact, the planting plans we had planned on that side of the road, we took out. They simply wouldn't have lived unless we spent so much more money to take out all that ledge. It just wouldn't have been worth it.
Yeah.
So at a very high level, that's why phase 2 was much more than any other phase. Then you ask the next. Go ahead.
Can I jump in just quickly, Greg?
Yep.
You know, on phase 1, Greg did all of the maintenance, the inspections, the making sure that everything was done properly. When we went and got the TAP grant for phase 2, we were not allowed to do that. We had to hire an outside firm to do the inspections that Greg did in phase 1. We estimate for about $20,000. Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, that bid was $160,000 just to do the inspections?
Closer to 120, about 126,000, I think, Steve.
Yeah, so you can see the cost went up with the TAP, incredibly hard to work with. So that's why we're moving to LOTSIP. Much easier to work with, less restrictive constraints on it. It's just a much better way to go, I think.
So then I asked myself, what's the next most costly phase? Well, it looks to be phase 4. Now, phase 4 is in a very preliminary design phase. We don't even have it approved yet, but there was a significant amount of site work on phase 4. It includes about $200,000 worth of retaining walls, and there's a lot of ledge and a lot of fill. So phase 4 is going to be an expensive phase, you know, if we ever get to that point. So that's the overview.
Okay. Any questions? I'm sorry, go ahead, Greg.
No, go ahead. Any questions?
I'm all set, Greg. Thank you.
No, you answered them as you were talking, so thank you.
So the next page is to bring you back. This was the phase 4 approval at a town meeting on August 5th, 2019. $2.4 million, 480,000. So that one is already in the books, if you will, or on the balance sheet, maybe is another way to say it. And that's TAP funding that even though we're the #1 approved project in the COG, this project cannot move forward until an infrastructure bill is passed by Congress. Now, will that ever happen, or when that happens, I don't know, but there's nothing that I can see on the horizon saying this is coming anytime soon.
I agree.
So that's just a little background for you. So now we'll go to the next page. And this is the same phase 4 scope of work that I shared with you a couple years, over a year ago. This is phase 4. And if you look at the gold section, not the yellow, it's the 2 outside parts of this that are on the north and south side of the enclave. And across the street from the enclave, which is on the top picture on the west side of the road, on the east side or the south side of that picture is Green Acres. And if you look closely, you'll see the new intersection with the turning lanes into both of those developments. Phase 4 assumes that developers are going to put that in. It's not in our scope of work. That's that gap area I talked about in that first sketch.
And
So
Greg,
phase 4 hasn't changed from scope.
I'm sorry, we redid our zoning to accommodate exactly this, right?
Yes.
To put that in the zoning regs.
Yeah. Yes. So that's the same scope of work that it's always been for phase 4. So the next page. So the only thing that's changed now from the $2.4 million phase 4 that's been approved is 1 year of inflation. It's $2.5 million. And I've moved things around from the LOTSIP column to a town column. So there is no federal money here. And again, this is very, very preliminary. It assumes summer of 2022 construction. And, I think there's enough room in these numbers that I feel comfortable that we can do phase 4 with LOTSIP for just 100,000 more. Recognizing we're in a very, very preliminary stage here.
But we had approved 480,000 last year, and now the
Yes.
town would be 363?
Yes, that's the beauty of LOTSIP versus TAP. That's correct.
Okay. So it'll come in 100,000 more, but we're saving 100,000.
Yes, and
Okay.
I can even argue that at 150,000 for design engineering is probably on the high side.
Mhm.
And you can
Oh.
notice there's 25% contingency for construction, and I put in 5% contingency just for us owners to have that. So I think there's room to work here, and to me, it seems very doable.
If I can just ask a question, the gap spaces, we don't know when those parcels will be built on,
We
but it
don't,
makes sense to complete it. And then when they are built, we can charge them for what the cost was so that we don't have a gap, so it is seamless.
well, the plan is, and the developers have said, they're going to be done before us. If that doesn't happen, we can go in and do the work, but I don't believe there's a mechanism now to assess any property owner for streetscape.
No,
Steve, you
actually,
want to
Greg,
comment?
our regs do allow us to charge up to 50% of the cost of putting streetscape to the property owners abutting that streetscape. We have not done it so far
Right,
because we want development. We want these people to come in, and we're getting 80%, 85% of these paid for with grants. But we do have that option.
yeah. So Sue, to your point, instead of this being a $2.5 million project, it'll probably be another $750,000 more. And I can get that estimate and that update, but the developer said to us multiple times, he plans on being done before us.
Okay.
That's just why I didn't put it here.
Okay, that's
And-
fine.
and
I didn't want it to be years in between if something happened with the development.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that still may be, but I'm working on that assumption now, but your point is good. if we want to ask for that additional funding, now would be the time, and we may never have to spend it.
It
Yeah,
would
no,
be to the builder's advantage because it would be at, probably if they were to complete it after us, we would get it at that lower rate because it's done earlier than they would have gotten it done.
yeah, Sue raises a really good point here. We don't want a gap in the sidewalks. So if we're ahead of the developers, maybe now we plan, guys, should we plan now to do the whole thing and assess those developers when they finally build? Or as we go along, we're just going to assess them?
Steve, can I make one comment?
Yes.
We are at a limit. I believe the lot SIP program maxes out at $3 million per application.
Right.
And at this point, we're submitting 2 applications, phase 4 and phase 5. Now, I will tell you, other towns have spent more than $3 million on a single project, but I believe the applications came in under 3.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so
we'd
we have to watch that.
We'd have to watch it.
So why don't we look at that, Greg? Could we look at that and see what the additional costs do you think would be to fill that gap?
Yeah, I can, but
But you need to have this done by the 14th?
it's got to be submitted up. The deadline's the 14th with no exceptions.
Mhm.
So,
Well, let's see what we can do. If we can't, we can. If we can, we can. Right?
all right, so I'll start working on that, and I'll give you an incremental cost for that gap area. I can get that in, a day or 2.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, thank you. So next slide. Okay, so this would be in our previous lot SIP applications. The application requires a letter of support, not a town meeting, but just saying the selectmen have seen the application and they support the application. So this is that suggested document for that 2.5 million and everything else I just talked about.
Okay. So here's when we need a motion, right?
Either, yes, sometime tonight.
Right. Do you have any more slides, Greg?
Yeah, phase 5.
Okay, let's go through phase 5 and then we'll go back.
Okay. Okay, phase 5 is going to be our smallest phase. I'm really in favor of it.
Too.
It's only a sidewalk on one side of the road. And let me get your bearings, but this is Federal Road going north and south, Old Route 7 and Laurel Hill Road. So phase 3 is we're on Old Route 7. You can see the sidewalk and the trees that are going in next summer. But phase 3 ends at the intersection, then turns north past Angelo's dry cleaners and ends at the back of his property line.
Mm.
There's 3 projects planned on this sketch by developing 6 townhomes at the southeast corner of Laurel Hill and Old Route 7. And they already have been told they've got to put streetscape in.
Right.
And then east of that is the new medical building, which you can see sketched in there at the intersection of Federal Road and Laurel Hill Road. That is also Paul Scalzo's project. He knows he's got to put streetscape in on his side of the road. And then across the street is a Still River Greenway and the new grocery store. So our phase 5 simply puts a sidewalk on the other side of the road and another one of those beautiful decorative crosswalks so people can cross basically Federal Road safely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
So this is our phase 5. Again, Tony Lucera is at ZBA right now asking for their approval on a little bit of setback variance, but this would be a very nice fit into that grocery store project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Oh.
that grocery store project started 3.5 or 4 years ago, and for a while there, they just couldn't come to agreement. But once they did, about Greg 6 months ago, is that right?
About right.
They're moving forward like crazy, and I think they want to break ground next spring at the latest.
They already have an LOI from the, so there's already a partnership put together, the funding's there, and they've already spent over $100,000 and have their driveway cut approved by the DOT. So they are spending serious money. And what they have said to us is by the fact that we've done this streetscape work, it's really, really helped them put this deal together.
Greg, I have a question. You had mentioned a couple times that these developers are responsible for putting in the streetscapes. But I thought you also said that if they come back to us and say that they can't do it, that we would need to consider that going into our budget. And I'm a little confused.
No, let me clarify what I
Go ahead,
said.
Greg.
Everybody is required to meet the zoning regulations. The zoning regulations require our streetscape design when a developer develops their property.
Okay.
If they go in first, they're going to put that in their design. And in every phase of streetscape, they've all said to me, Greg, we're going in first, we're going to put it in. So the town's project, these 5 phases don't include streetscape for that reason.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. What we did was, and we did this very deliberately, is we started with the streetscapes and built them, and the town paid for them to attract this kind of development. And now we're going to let the developers take over because they see the advantage. They
Okay.
see
Yeah.
the-
No, I misinterpreted.
yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
I feel much better now.
Mhm. Greg, I agree. I think phase 5 is very important, not only for the looks of it as you're coming up Federal Road. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to just start it after Angelo's, but for all the residents that live in Laurel Hill as well. I mean, that's going to be a safety for them to cross the street to get to the Greenway. Otherwise, they're walking all the way up to the Hearth and crossing there.
Yeah, right. Yes. I agree.
So I agree.
So the next slide is the cost estimate.
Oh, that, huh?
Hey,
And as I just said, this is the smallest scope of work, therefore the lowest cost. And you can see there's a lot of contingency there. 25% for the construction, 5% for the owners, about 5%. And there's only one right of way. If you go out there and look, you'll see where the dumpster is for that medical building that's on the north end of that project. We're going to have to redo their driveway a bit, or maybe that area where the dumpster is. And there's a very small taking to get that done.
I'd like to get that dumpster hidden.
Yeah. The problem with that development is there's roads on all sides of the building. There's no place to hide it. But we'll look at it. I mean, this is very preliminary.
Mhm. The town cost for phase 5
Yes.
appears to be 580
No, it's 85.
85,000.
for the grand total. Thank you. I was wondering where that came from. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, 495 and 85 is 580, 500. Okay, it's a little confusing, yeah.
Mhm.
So that is it. And then the last slide is the same letter of support for phase 5.
Yeah.
So any further questions for Greg?
No, I'm all set. It was very, no, he, like Sue said, any questions that I had were answered through the presentations.
Yeah, you know, I thought it was important to start at phase 1 and show the progression of what we've done and how we're doing it and why we're doing it, because it does, for residents, they need to understand this. So Sue, do you have any further questions?
No. Well, my only question is the letter of support for phase 4. If we're doing a little bit more homework on this, and I don't want you to put in a whole bunch of time, Greg, but is that going to change the amounts that are on this letter of support? Can we approve it thinking that the letter of support might change?
I think, yes. I think what we do is issue the letter of support up to the amount that Greg decides is needed to fill those gaps.
Okay.
And if we have to, we can have a quick Zoom meeting to approve it.
Okay.
Tom, can we do that? Can we do an up to amount? We have to give this letter of support. And we're thinking of adding in the gap spaces up above.
I think you can, but I think the way to do it is Greg said the limit's 3 million. So maybe you can just say up to 3 million right now.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Oh, that's a good idea. Why don't we do that? Greg, are you comfortable with that?
Sure, yep.
Okay. So I would make a motion that we approve this letter of support for project phase 4.
Mhm.
And the only difference with the addition that the project could be estimated up to be 3 million, and the town would commit 15% of that. So that would be $450,000 total as a possible. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Harry seconds. Sue, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approved.
I would just note that these letters need to say subject to Board of Finance and town meeting approval.
All right. Okay, so Greg, can we do that just so we don't forget? And Ginny?
Yes,
Yeah, we add that subject. I amend that motion to subject the Board of Finance
Yes.
approval and acceptance. Okay. And then I would make a second motion that this, we do the same for phase 5. But I don't, do we need to change this at all, Greg, do you think?
not the amount. I just think the subject to has to be in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Subject to Board of
agree.
Finance and town meeting, yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Subject to
Now-
Board of Finance and town meeting.
Between the two projects, it is going to get us over 3 million.
But it's only per application, not per town.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
What we're
So-
doing, what we're doing now is something we've never done before, at least for LOTSIP. We're sending in 2 grant applications at the same time. And because it's first come, first serve, if we get this through the Board of Finance and the town meeting,
Oh,
we can
lost-
do these projects relatively quickly.
Yeah.
Now, I also understand there's a lot of careful consideration about budget. If somebody were to ask me which phase, if you had to pick one, which would you do? For me, it'd be phase 5. Because
Right.
number one, it's lower cost, and number two, I think that grocery store is going to go in before the Enclave or Green Acres.
I agree.
Right.
I
Right,
agree.
and it connects the lower part.
Yep.
Greg,
Right.
can you had mentioned that there is going to be housing in part 5 in this phase 5. And I think it's important that you mention what type of housing it is. These are going to be owner occupied, correct?
Yeah, well, there's going to be two types of housing. In the supermarket project, there is going to be a second and third floor, and all 1-bedroom apartments. Greg, what is it? 45? I think.
I honestly, Steve, I don't remember the number.
I think it's around 45, but it's important to remember they're all 1-bedroom apartments. So you're not going to have big families there.
Right.
The second on phase 5 is down old Route 7. So
Right.
below, we didn't show it on the picture really well. Can you show, yeah, here. So if
That's
you
for the
go
new spot.
south, where it says proposed granite curb over to the left, if you go down there, down that street,
Yes.
that's where the duplexes are going to be. 6
Mm-hmm.
of them for 12 units.
These are owner occupied though, aren't they?
Owner occupied. They're houses, but they're going to be townhouses, 2 houses attached,
Right.
houses.
I just think it's important that the residents know that, these are going to be owner occupied, which is going to bring, this is,
Yep. And
but-
all market rate apartments. They're not asking for any 830G or anything like that on the supermarket project. So it's exactly what we want.
thank you.
And maybe we'll get a Starbucks. Ooh, that'd be great.
And Steve, aren't we also getting parking for the Still River Greenway north of that grocery store?
Yes, I should mention that. So we agreed to give the supermarket project our standard abatement offer with the agreement that they will put in a dedicated municipal parking lot for the Still River Greenway. I think it's 36 spaces. They will own it, they will maintain it, they will stripe it, they will snowplow it, but it'll be dedicated to municipal parking, which we really need in the downtown. I think this is a win-win and a home run across the board for everybody.
Greenway and for shopping. I mean, this is what,
Yeah.
we're going for, is a destination.
Yep, exactly. So I would make a motion that we approve a support letter exactly the same as phase 4
Mhm.
or phase 5 with the amount. I'm sorry, can we go back to the amounts there? Total of 600, is it? for not to exceed an $85,000 contribution from the town.
Steve, I just rounded the numbers here, just rounded them
90,
up a
okay.
bit.
Okay, not to exceed $90,000 for the total cost estimate. Tom, did I say that properly? Unmute.
I'm sure you did.
Okay.
I'm sure you did.
Okay.
Ginny has it right.
Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Approved, 3-0. Greg, thank you very
I
much
can't
for
see,
all
Tom.
the great work you do.
I mean,
on
I
that.
can't.
So Steve, what I'll do is we'll amend
Okay.
those 2 letters. I'll finish the application for your signature by, I don't know, late this week or early next week.
Okay, good. Then we'll get them out.
Good. Thank you all.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg, again.
That was very informative. Okay, we move on to new items. As you know, for the last, for every year, as long as we've been in business, I think, the YMCA asked us to approve the Neighborhood Assistance Act. And they are, if we do this, they are allowed to get donations that are then tax deductible for the donor. And the requirements of the act require that we make a motion that the selectmen schedule a public hearing on Monday, June 1st at 60, we're saying 6:45, for the purpose of receiving public comment on proposals submitted. The YMCA has been a great neighbor of ours. They've done a great job. We've done this every year since Sue and I have been in office. So I think this is a no-brainer for us. I make that motion, and do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconds, any questions, issues, concerns
No,
about?
I don't think I have any questions. Yeah.
Okay, Sue, any questions now?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Carries 3-0. Okay, town budget. I'm just gonna read this so that it's in the record. The Board of Selectmen voted unanimously on April 6th, according to Government Lamont's Executive Order 7I, paragraph 13, which prohibits annual town meetings and referenda for budget adoption. The order directs selectmen to authorize and direct the Board of Finance to formulate and adopt the town budget for the fiscal year 2020-21. And in accordance with Executive Order 7C, Select did authorize and directed the Board of Finance to adopt the budget on or before June 4th, 2020, and to set a mill rate. The Finance Board is planning to meet every Wednesday at 7 p.m. over the next few weeks to discuss the town's budget approval process review following the Board of Selectmen's mandate in accordance with the government's executive order. Call-in information and Zoom dial-in is available on the town website. There has been some confusion about the governor's executive order, which mandates, let me repeat that, mandates that the Board of Finance adopt the budget and set a mill rate. The town has no option. Ideally, both of our boards would prefer a traditional town meeting and referendum and allow everyone to vote, but the executive order specifically directs the Board of Finance to set a mill rate and a budget for next year by June 4th, 2020. The governor came out this morning with an update to this, clarifying this and reiterating that the Board of Finance must set a budget, must set a mill rate. And they are working diligently on that. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. Any questions, concerns, Sue, Harry?
No.
No, I think we understand this. There are a lot of people in town. I understand they want to vote. We all want that. We all want a referendum. The Board of Finance has been put in a place that is really ugly, in my opinion. But they are the elected representatives of the town. It's similar to a representative town meeting, although there's only 6 of them. These guys and ladies are working incredibly hard to come up with a budget that will work for the town, given everything that's going on with this virus. I have to say 2 things. One, I think they're working incredibly hard and doing a great job. They did direct us and ask us to put together a budget for next year with no more than a 1.5% increase in the budget. We weren't able to do that. We're going to have a decrease in revenues next year, which we've delineated very carefully in the budget we proposed on Friday. And it's going to be really difficult. We're looking at a 1.78% increase now. with what I would term almost a massive cut in the Board of Ed budget. The Board of Ed has incredible new expenses in special ed that are not going to go away, that we have to fund. And if we take that money from their budget, they're going to have to go into other areas. Now, do I think the Board of Ed can tighten their belts? Everyone can tighten their belts. But I think the budget that the Board of Finance asked us to present, and I've spoken to a couple of the Board of Finance members today, goes too far in cutting the Board of Ed budget. The town operations side now has a 0.31% increase. That's going to be really difficult to work with, but we'll work with it. And I've told the Board of Finance, and they've agreed. If we need more money, we'll come back to them. Our expenses on EMS and those services could go through the roof. We've taken our best guess at what they're going to be, but we don't know how they're going to end up. So we did put that budget together. Marcia did a great job doing it, but I have to go on record as saying I think it's too deep a cut for the schools. It comes out to, I think, a 1.78% increase in the overall mill rate. That's very reasonable, giving, I know it's difficult times, but we have incredible expenses on the Board of Ed side. Sue, Harry, any comments?
Well, and I'm not going to speak at all. My comment has nothing to do with whether I think we should raise that the Board of Finance should raise the budget, lower the budget, have a zero, have whatever. This has nothing to do with that. But what I want people to understand is that our Board of Finance has been put in a position that no Board of Finance in the history of the state, to my knowledge, has been put in, certainly in the history of Brookfield. We get emails talking about how irresponsible it would be to cut the budget, or how irresponsible it would be to not have a zero increase. This Board of Finance, you may agree with whatever the number is, you may disagree with it, but you have to agree that they are doing the right thing by taking the time and dissecting every single square inch of both budgets, the town and the Board of Education. They are being exceptionally responsible in their duties. So again, regardless of where this comes out, and I'll be honest with you, I may not be happy with it at all, but I certainly am never going to blame them or say that they were irresponsible. And I will support them because of the work and the diligence that they've been showing through this whole process. I just want to make sure that people understand that.
I agree. The amount of work both the town and the Board of Finance has done. I talked to other towns, and I've been talking to other first selectmen and mayors. Most of these towns are taking a top-down approach. We want to get the 0%, just cut here, cut there, etc. We haven't done that. We have gone through every single budget, every single line item on the town side. I know the schools have tried to do this too, to come up with really good, true numbers that we think we're going to end up at. And as Marcia said earlier, this is going to be an iterative process. Harry, you're right. This is going to change on a month-to-month basis. But the budget that we sent to them is bare bones. And I just honestly believe the school side is too low. Sue?
I think what Harry said is absolutely true. And I'd like to add to that all the work that Marcia and Steve have been doing, and Kevin as well. It's amazing the number of hours that they've put into this, and I appreciate it. And if I can speak to the school side, we have obligations. We have our students. There's students that we have to pay to educate them outside of Brookfield because that's the way it is. We're going to get past this, but this is the time for our children to be educated. We're not going to be able to say, okay, go ahead and you're going to go back and you're going to do 6th grade again. You're going to do 7th grade again. This is not a do-over. We have to give the teachers and the schools what they need to educate our children. And we don't know everything that's going to be right now. We don't know if they're going to have to take some more time off next year if the virus comes through for a second time. I think to Harry's point, he said earlier, how much of the schools and the buildings and all that are we going to have to clean? We don't know what the cost of that is going to be. So if we bring this down to a nothing % increase for our taxes, it's not. It's a decrease, and I don't think that we can do that to our families and to our children and our reputation as Brookfield. So thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
I just would add that we do have a large contingency, and we did talk about using that contingency on the town side for paying some of these costs on the Board of Ed side for the COVID.
But those expenses, if we have to go in and clean every school once a week, top to bottom, the expenses will be out of this world. So we've got to figure this out. We don't know how we're going to do it yet. So having said that, I think Harry and Sue, I think both your comments are very, very applicable. But we're in an unprecedented time, as Harry said, and we're going to have to work on this on a weekly basis, I think, for the next few months. Okay. Any further comments on that? Okay.
No, and the next meeting is this Wednesday.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wednesday, you
so-
can go on the town website, the Zoom in numbers, and please, residents, please, I'll look right into the camera. Please join, give us your comments. Tell us how you feel. Tell us why you feel that way. The more input the Board of Finance gets, the better. They'll make better decisions if they're listening to you, but that you've got to speak for them to hear you. Thank you. So now we move on to the consent agenda. I would make a motion that the selectmen approve the items on the consent agenda as follows. The selectmen approvals for routine matters, which includes the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes for April 6th and April 20th. Employee changes, of which there were none. Driveway bonds for 25 Kellogg, 126 Candlewood Lake Road, 59 Flax Hill Road, and the zoning commission bond releases, which are pretty standard. All those in favor of those? Oh, do I have a second? Sorry.
Sure, I'll
2
second.
seconds. Any
Sure.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries 3-0. Additional monthly agenda items. I would make a motion, this is for the Arts Commission, that the selectmen appoint Bridget O'Hara to fill a vacancy on the Arts Commission for a term of 5/4/20 to 2/7/22, as recommended by the Arts Commission Chair in the letter that you have in your package. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Sue seconds. Any
Mhm.
discussion? All those
The
in,
discussion is, was that a little bit of a brogue when you mentioned that name? O'Hara.
my family background is Irish, but I wasn't trying to do a bro.
It sure sounded it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries.
Aye.
I would make another motion for the Brookfield Housing Authority. You know, Daniel Pearson had moved out of town. He did a great job for us. There was an opening. I would make a motion that the selectmen appoint Artie Pilson, who's a Democrat, to fill a vacancy in the Housing Authority for a term of 5/4/20 to 2/6/23, as recommended by the Democratic Town Committee. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
We've had the opportunity of seeing Artie's resume on this, and Artie is a perfect candidate for this position. He's got numerous years of background, and I know he's going to do a wonderful job. So
Yeah.
I thank Artie for coming forward.
He's also a very good guy, so thank him for joining.
Steve, do you know how many applications, just out of curiosity, approximately how many applications there were for the position? Okay,
One. And
That's what I
also
was-
for the Art Commission.
that's what I was thinking. I just wanted to.
I know the Arts Commission is something that I do, sit on ex officio. There are more openings if anyone has any desire to join that. You can
Good
either
point.
reach out to the Democratic Town Committee or Republican Town Committee, or if you're not a party, then Ginny in Steve's office.
Yeah, please come to us. We'd love to have to pick between 10 people. We'd make 9 people unhappy, but we'd prefer that. So all those in favor of appointing Artie, say aye.
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 Aye. Carries 3-0. I would just like to take one moment here. Tom, if you could, can you just give us a quick overview of how you see all of these executive orders? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but how you see the executive orders playing out over the next couple of months? Do you see them increasing, decreasing? I know you talked to a lot of different groups.
Well, you mentioned one of the clarifications that came through over the weekend that solidified and clarified that there will be no votes allowed for the annual budgets.
Right.
We're waiting for some other clarifications that may come from the governor's office in terms of additional town meeting type votes, such as for special appropriations that are outside of the normal budget process, of which the capital projects resolution would be one. So those may be forthcoming. My best educated guess is that those executive orders are going to stay in place easily until July 1, with some perhaps modifications, such as the governor's already modified things in terms of a slow reopening for businesses as of the 20th of this month. So as Steve and I, and probably the rest of you know, these executive orders sometimes come fast and furious, and usually after dinner is when they go up on the website. So Steve and I are talking about them in the evening. So it's an ever evolving process, and Greg had alluded to it earlier in terms of every day there's something new. So that's my take at the moment.
Thank you. One thing Tom mentioned that I didn't mention to you guys is that it's our opinion, and Tom and I have discussed this 2 or 3 times, we cannot move forward with our capital projects that we're borrowing for until we have a town meeting and a referendum, because it's over $1 million. The executive orders do allow you to move forward with capital projects if they're for health and safety, dangerous, 3 different criteria, I think, right,
That's
Tom?
correct. Right. Yes.
We don't, Tom and I don't feel we meet any of those criteria right now.
And what that meant is that if they met those 3 criteria, again, it would be a decision by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, right, as opposed to going to a town meeting, then a referendum.
So I think our decision should be, as a Board of Selectmen, not to move that forward until we can have a town meeting and a referendum. Now, that may change if something becomes super critical. You know, we have a bridge that's breaking down or something like that. But none of the capital projects we have on our borrowing agenda meet the criteria. They don't meet the hurdle. And I don't think we can move forward on those until such time as we can have a town meeting. And that's going to cause us some problems, because we may not approve those until September, October, November, January, who knows when. I just wanted you guys to be aware of that.
Is this going to delay road repairs over the summer?
No, we can still spend the cash portion.
Okay.
Which is the 80%. Right. So it won't cripple us.
We just won't get as much done, perhaps.
We won't get as much.
Liked.
Right. Okay. Any public comment? Would anybody like to make public comment? John Lucas, would you like to make any public comment? No? Okay. Anybody else?
I just have a question, and I was trying to sneak this in. On Marcia's report, she had mentioned, or on one of the slides, it showed a cost of $25,000 for computers for faculty or for people to work at home.
Yep.
Once we go back to work, what happens with the $25,000 worth of computers?
Those computers stay with the town. We'll probably take some of them in and store them. We had in next year's budget, actually before next year's budget, I had ordered that we order new computers for the registrar's offices, because we were borrowing computers from the schools and from the library to transact registrar business. We don't know where some of those computers have been. Right. That's crazy. So we were going to order inexpensive computers. Registrars needed 8 of them to run any referendum or vote. So we'll reposition some of those computers, about a third of them to the registrar's office, and they'll be dedicated to them, and we will only use them for registrar business.
And Steve, if you saw the information that Denise Merrill came out with today, I mean, they're really going to start cracking down on all the cybersecurity and all. So
Yep.
using the new computers would make perfect sense.
It will. It's going to be much tighter this year, and we need to be able to prove to the state that we can control our elections and not allow hacking. The idea, in my opinion, of borrowing a computer from the library, which computer has been handed out to dozens of different people. I don't care how many security systems you have on a computer. I just don't care. You can't have that. Registrars need dedicated computers. So what we're going to be doing, we've been doing this in the past, Harry, is transitioning people from desktop computers, the big towers,
Right.
to laptops. So what we'll do is just transition these laptops into their offices and retire those old desktops. So they won't go away.
Good.
We'll dedicate a few we've been doing it every year. We'll dedicate a few to the registrar's office for their uses, and then we'll continue to move everybody to laptops so that the next time we have a problem like this, boom, people pick up their computers, they've got the monitors, they got everything they need, they go home, next day they're up and operating. It took us about 2 weeks to get there this time.
Right. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Sue, any further comments?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Any public comment? There's a Jim on, I see. Jim, do you have a public comment?
He said, thank you for passing the streetscape.
Oh, okay. So I know which Jim that is.
He sent
Okay.
he sent an email.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to end this meeting. Do I have a motion made by, who will do it?
Go ahead, Harry.
I would make a motion for adjournment for our Board of Selectmen's virtual meeting.
Yeah, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second. Any discussion?
No, everyone stay safe, be healthy,
Yes, stay
wear your
safe.
masks,
Don't
6
forget
feet.
Yeah, what did that mayor in Kentucky say? Wash your hands, you filthy animals. Did you see?
No.
It was-
Hopefully see everybody in June. That would be something that we can hope for, right?
Yeah, it will.
In
And
person.
as a board, we will continue to keep the public apprised of the decisions we make about opening and everything. We're going to be doing that in cooperation with each other and Harry, I think you agree, we're all going to work together on that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it by fiat. I'm going to talk to you guys first.
Mhm.
With that,
And thank Greg for doing the work he's doing and the economic development people as
and
well.
Marcia
I know
too.
they're working
Marcia
hard
has
too.
been working. Marcia and Kevin have been going, ripping this budget up and
I know.
phenomenal what they've been doing. And we cannot forget Dan in IT, who has been working almost every night and 7 days a week when we were transitioning to laptops. He's done a great job. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
Dan.
Having said that, and Tom, we couldn't forget Tom. You're the only person we didn't forget. Thank you very much, Tom. Okay, having said that, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Good night, guys.